My marriage ended at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday under harsh fluorescent lights and a $20 desk lamp that cast shadows like prison bars across my wife's face. I'm Paul Morrison, 38 years old, technical sales director for Meridian Industries. I fix problems for a living: broken systems, failed negotiations, corporate disasters. But I couldn't fix what I found that afternoon in the executive wing of our downtown office building. The elevator ride to the 15th floor felt longer than usual. I was carrying Kathy's forgotten lunch, turkey sandwich, apple slices, the way she liked it since college. 20 years of marriage teaches you these small gestures matter. Or so I thought. Her office door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open without knocking, expecting to find my wife hunched over quarterly reports, her blonde hair catching the afternoon light streaming through those floor-to-ceiling windows that came with her recent promotion. Instead, I found her under Bryce Walters' desk, not metaphorically. Literally under his mahogany executive desk, on her knees, her skirt hiked up, his hands tangled in her hair. The lunch container slipped from my fingers, hitting the marble floor with a plastic crack that echoed through the silence. They froze. Kathy looked up at me, her lipstick smeared, her eyes not showing shame or guilt or even surprise. Just annoyance, like I'd interrupted something important. Bryce straightened his tie, smoothed his silver hair, and had the audacity to smile. "Paul, we were just discussing the Henderson account." "Is that what you call it?" My voice came out steady, which surprised me. Inside, everything was collapsing like a controlled demolition. Kathy stood up, brushing off her knees with deliberate slowness. She walked over to me, close enough that I could smell his cologne mixed with her perfume, a combination that suddenly made perfect sense. All those late nights, all those weekend conferences, all those times she came home with that satisfied look I'd stupidly attributed to career success. She leaned in and whispered, "Now this is a real man, someone you actually want to please, unlike you." The smirk that followed those words burned itself into my memory. It wasn't cruel exactly, just dismissive, like I was a problem she'd finally solved by replacing me with the upgraded model. I pulled off my wedding ring and set it on Bryce's desk next to his Mont Blanc pen set. "Congratulations, you can have each other." Walking away took every ounce of self-control I possessed. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the parking garage, but my mind was already working, already planning. 20 years in corporate sales teaches you patience, strategy, and how to identify your opponent's weaknesses. Kathy had just given me plenty to work with. That evening, I sat in my car outside our suburban home, her suburban home, since Daddy's money had paid for it, and made a list. Not a grocery list or a honey-do list, but an inventory of everything I knew about my wife and her new boyfriend that they probably wished I didn't. Bryce Walters, 45, married to Linda Walters for 18 years, 2 kids in private school, drives a restored 1967 Mustang he babies more than his actual children. Old money family, serves on 3 charity boards, has political ambitions. His wife Linda is the jealous type with a sharp tongue and connections to half the city's social elite. Kathy Morrison, 34, ambitious to the point of ruthlessness, image-obsessed, terrified of her controlling mother finding out about anything that might reflect poorly on the family name. Her father, Frank, is a retired construction foreman with a temper and old-fashioned ideas about marriage vows. I pulled out my phone and started making calls. "Rye, it's Paul. I need a favor." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Ryan Mitchell had been my best friend since high school. Ex-military, now runs a salvage yard on the south side of town. Practical, loyal, and completely unimpressed by corporate politics. "What kind of favor?" His voice was cautious. Ryan knew me well enough to recognize when I was in planning mode. "The kind that requires your particular skill set and a complete lack of conscience." "Ah, that kind of favor. What did Kathy do now?" "Found herself a boyfriend. Her boss, actually. Decided to let me know in the most humiliating way possible." Silence on the other end, then. "That which? What do you need?" "Information first, then we get creative." I spent the next hour explaining what I'd discovered and what I knew about both of them. Rye listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "You sure about this, Paul? Once you start down this road, there's no going back." "She made that decision for both of us. I'm just evening the score." "Fair enough. Give me 24 hours. I'll make some calls." After hanging up, I sat in the driveway looking at the house I'd helped pay for, thinking about the woman inside who'd just torn apart 2 decades of my life for a promotion and a man with better connections. The anger was there, burning steady and hot, but underneath it was something colder and more focused. Kathy thought she knew me. Reliable Paul, predictable Paul. Paul who fixed problems quietly and never made waves. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The next morning, Kathy acted like nothing had happened. She made coffee, checked her phone, complained about traffic, the same routine we'd followed for years. The only difference was the careful distance she maintained, like she was afraid I might suddenly explode. "We need to talk," I said, setting down my mug. "About what?" She didn't look up from her tablet, scrolling through emails with practiced indifference. "About yesterday, about Bryce, about what happens next." Now she looked at me, and I saw a flicker of something that might have been nervousness. "What happens next is we handle this like adults. No drama, no scenes. We'll figure out the details later." Details like how long this has been going on? Or details like whether his wife knows? Her face went pale. "You wouldn't." "Wouldn't what? Tell the truth? Why would that bother you?" She stood up abruptly, grabbing her purse and briefcase. "I'm late for work. We'll discuss this tonight." "No, we won't. Tonight you'll be packing." That stopped her halfway to the door. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. I want you out. Tonight." Though she turned around, and now I saw the real Kathy, the one who'd clawed her way up the corporate ladder by stepping on anyone who got in her way. "This is my house, Paul. Daddy bought it, remember? You want to leave? Be my guest. Your house, your rules. Got it. I'll be staying at Rise for a while." The confusion on her face was almost worth the humiliation of the day before. She'd expected me to fight for the house, for her, for our marriage. Instead, I was walking away, and that wasn't part of her script. "That's it? You're just giving up?" I picked up my coffee mug and rinsed it in the sink, taking my time. "I'm not giving up, Kathy. I'm just getting started." An hour later, I was in Rye's kitchen, drinking better coffee and listening to his report. Bryce Walters is exactly what he appears to be: rich, arrogant, and sloppy. His wife Linda suspects something's going on, but doesn't know who or what. Their marriage has been rocky for years, mostly because he can't keep it in his pants. This isn't his first affair. What about Kathy's family? Her mother calls every Sunday at exactly 2 p.m. Never misses. Very religious, very judgmental about moral failures. Her father Frank still thinks his little princess can do no wrong, but he's got a temper and old-school ideas about marriage vows. Perfect. What else? Rye grinned. This is where it gets interesting. I've got a contact in the phone company. For a small fee, we can arrange some technical difficulties with Kathy's cell service. What kind of technical difficulties? The kind where all her incoming calls and texts get forwarded to someone else's number. Say, her mother's house. I stared at him. That's brilliant. And completely untraceable? My guy's very good at his job. It'll look like a system glitch. Happens all the time. Do it. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Kathy's phone would forward everything to her mother's landline for exactly 24 hours. Every text from Bryce, every call, every piece of evidence of their affair would go straight to the most judgmental person in her life. We set it up for Thursday, knowing that Bryce always sent her good morning texts and usually called during lunch. Her mother would get a front row seat to their relationship. Thursday morning, I was back at the office early, acting like nothing had changed. I had work to do, clients to call, meetings to attend. The difference was that now I was watching, listening, paying attention to details I'd previously ignored, like the way Kathy's assistant Jennifer rolled her eyes whenever Bryce's name came up, or how the other executives seemed to give him a wider berth lately, or the fact that his office door was closed more often than it used to be. At exactly 10:30, my phone rang. "Paul, this is Margaret." Kathy's mother, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. "I need to speak with you immediately." "Of course, Margaret. What can I do for you?" "You can explain to me why my daughter is receiving text messages from her boss saying things that would make a sailor blush, and why he's calling her baby and talking about hotel rooms." I let the silence stretch just long enough. "I wish I could explain that, Margaret. I really do." "Are you telling me that Kathy is having an affair?" "I'm not telling you anything, but if you've been getting her messages, you probably know more about her activities than I do." The explosion that followed was everything I'd hoped for. Margaret Morrison was a force of nature when she was angry, and she'd just discovered that her perfect daughter was everything she'd raised her not to be. By noon, Kathy's entire family knew. By 2 o'clock, they were calling her directly, demanding explanations she couldn't give without admitting everything. I was in my office when she stormed in, her face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "What did you do?" I didn't do anything. Your phone's been forwarding messages to your mother. Technical glitch, apparently. These things happen. This is not a coincidence, Paul. Fix it. I'm a sales director, not a phone technician. Call customer service. She leaned across my desk, her voice dropping to a whisper. I know you're behind this, and if you think this is going to stop me from seeing Bryce, you're wrong. I wouldn't dream of stopping you. Your personal life is your business, just like mine is mine. That evening, Rye and I sat in his kitchen, listening to the messages on Kathy's voicemail, the ones that hadn't been forwarded, the ones from her family demanding answers, apologies, explanations. Phase 1 complete, Rye said, raising his beer bottle in a mock toast. Phase 1, I agreed. Now comes the fun part. Kathy's retaliation came Monday morning. I walked out to my driveway to find my reliable Honda Accord replaced with a rusted-out pickup truck that looked like it had been salvaged from a demolition derby. The note tucked under the windshield wiper was written in her father's handwriting. Fair trade. Your car for my daughter's reputation. I had to admit it was a good move. Frank Morrison might be old-fashioned, but he wasn't stupid. He'd figured out that I was behind his daughter's technical difficulties and decided to send a message. The truck barely started, belched black smoke, and had a radio that only picked up country music stations. By the time I limped into the office, I was 40 minutes late and smelled like exhaust fumes. Rough morning? Jennifer, Kathy's assistant, was trying not to smile as I walked past her desk. You could say that. Is my wife in? She's in a meeting with Mr. Walters, has been for the past hour. Of course she has. I made it to my office and found a stack of complaints on my desk. Anonymous reports to HR about my conduct, my attitude, my performance. Someone had been busy over the weekend, building a case against me. The complaints were clever. Nothing that could be proven false, but enough to create doubt about my professionalism. Late arrivals, missed deadlines, inappropriate comments, all things that could be explained by the stress of a failing marriage, but damaging nonetheless. I was reading through the third report when my phone rang. Paul Morrison, this is Detective Sarah Collins with Internal Affairs. We've received some reports about irregularities in your department. I'd like to schedule a meeting. What kind of irregularities? The kind better discussed in person. Are you available this afternoon? I hung up, feeling like I'd underestimated my opponents. Kathy and Bryce weren't just fighting back. They were trying to destroy my career before I could damage theirs. Time to escalate. I called Rye from my cell phone, stepping outside to avoid office surveillance. They're playing hardball. I need that information we discussed. Already on it. My guy at the security company came through. You're going to love this. An hour later, I was looking at 3 weeks' worth of security footage from the executive floor. Bryce and Kathy hadn't been as careful as they thought. The cameras caught everything: late-night meetings, weekend visits, intimate moments in supposedly empty hallways. But the real prize was the audio from Bryce's office. His phone calls, his meetings, his private conversations with Kathy about their plans for the future, plans that included getting rid of me and anyone else who might cause problems. We can't have Paul hanging around making trouble. Bryce's voice was clear on the recording. He knows too much, and he's got nothing to lose now. So what do you suggest? Kathy's voice, cold and calculating. Frame him for something. Make him look unstable, unreliable. Force him out before he can cause real damage. My father's already working on that. He's got friends in the police department. Good. The sooner we're rid of him, the better. I listened to the entire conversation twice, making notes, planning my next move. They wanted to play dirty? I'd show them what dirty really looked like. That afternoon, I had my meeting with Detective Collins. She was professional, thorough, and clearly skeptical of the complaints against me. These reports seem coordinated, she said, reviewing the files. Same time frame, similar language, all anonymous. That's unusual. What's unusual is that they're all lies. Can you prove that? I slid a flash drive across her desk. Security footage from the past month. I think you'll find it interesting. She plugged it into her laptop and watched in silence for 10 minutes. When she looked up, her expression had changed completely. Mr. Morrison, I think you should consider filing a counter-complaint. What I'm seeing here suggests harassment, possibly conspiracy. I'm considering several options, Detective. But first, I want to give the people involved a chance to do the right thing. That evening, I sent copies of the security footage to 3 people: Linda Walters, Margaret Morrison, and the chairman of Meridian Industries Board of Directors. Then I sat back and waited for the fireworks. They didn't take long. Linda Walters called her husband at 8 p.m., screaming loud enough that half the office heard her through his closed door. By 8:30, she was in the parking garage, keying his precious Mustang while security guards tried to stop her. Margaret Morrison called Kathy at 8:45, and their conversation was audible 3 cubicles away. Words like disgrace, shameful, and disowned featured prominently. The chairman's response was more subtle, but potentially more devastating. At 9 p.m., an email went out to all department heads. Effective immediately, all executive-level relationships must be disclosed to HR. Failure to comply will result in immediate termination. I was packing up my desk when Kathy appeared in my doorway. Her perfect composure was cracking, and I could see the desperation underneath. "You're destroying everything," she said. "I'm not destroying anything. I'm just letting people see what was already there. This won't bring me back to you." "I don't want you back, Kathy. I want you gone. There's a difference." She stepped closer, trying one last manipulation. "We could work this out. Go to counseling. Start over. You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. Because 20 years ago, I married someone I thought I knew. Someone with integrity, with loyalty, with basic human decency. That person doesn't exist anymore, if she ever did." "So that's it? You're just going to keep destroying my life until there's nothing left?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing but tired satisfaction. "I'm going to keep telling the truth until people stop believing your lies. How much of your life that destroys is entirely up to you." She left without another word, and I finished packing my desk in peace. Phase 2 was complete. Now came the final act. The next morning brought news that Bryce Walters had been suspended pending a full investigation into his conduct. His wife Linda had filed for divorce, taking half his assets and both kids. The board was meeting an emergency session to discuss his future with the company. Kathy was faring even worse. Her family had cut off all contact. Her mother was telling anyone who would listen about her daughter's moral failures, and HR was building a case for her termination based on undisclosed conflicts of interest. I should have felt satisfied. Instead, I felt empty, like I'd won a war but lost something important in the process. That feeling lasted until I found the note slipped under my apartment door. "You think you're so smart, Paul, but you forgot one thing. I know where you live, and I know people who don't like what you've done to my daughter. Back off or face the consequences." Frank Morrison. The threat was clear enough. Frank had connections in construction, in the police department, in places where favors were traded and problems were solved quietly. He was escalating to physical intimidation. Time for the final confrontation. I called Rye and explained the situation. His response was immediate. "Pack a bag. You're staying here until this is over." "I'm not running from Frank Morrison." "You're not running. You're being strategic. Let him make the first move, then we end this permanently." That afternoon, I sent a message to both Kathy and Frank through their lawyer. "Meeting tonight, 8 p.m., Riverside Hotel Conference Room B. Come alone, bring your evidence, and we'll settle this once and for all." I had no intention of settling anything, but I needed them in one place, with witnesses, where everything would be recorded and legal. Rye helped me set up the conference room with hidden cameras and audio equipment. We also arranged for hotel security to be nearby, just in case Frank's temper got the better of him. At exactly 8 p.m., they arrived. Kathy looked exhausted, her usual polish replaced by dark circles under her eyes and clothes that hadn't been pressed. Frank looked dangerous, red-faced, hands clenched into fists, the kind of angry that leads to violence. Bryce wasn't with them, which wasn't surprising. He was probably hiding at his lawyer's office, trying to salvage what was left of his career. "You wanted a meeting," Frank said, not bothering to sit down. "So talk." "I wanted to give you both a chance to apologize, to admit what you've done and try to make it right." Kathy laughed, a bitter sound with no humor in it. "Apologize? For what? For moving on with my life? For finding someone who actually appreciates me? For 20 years of lies? For the affair? For trying to destroy my career when I found out? You destroyed your own career when you decided to play games with people who are smarter than you." Frank stepped forward, his voice dropping to a growl. "My daughter doesn't owe you anything. You want to blame someone for your failed marriage? Look in the mirror. Your daughter is a cheating liar who threw away 20 years for a promotion and a man who's already thrown her under the bus to save his own skin." That's when Frank snapped. He lunged across the table, hands reaching for my throat, his face purple with rage. I was ready for him. 20 years of dealing with angry clients had taught me to read the warning signs, and Rye had taught me a few things about self-defense. I sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and used his momentum to send him crashing into the wall. He hit hard and slid down, dazed but not seriously hurt. Hotel security burst through the door at that moment, followed by 2 police officers who'd been waiting in the lobby. "That's assault," I said, pointing at Frank. "I want to press charges." The next hour was a blur of statements, reports, and explanations. Frank was arrested for assault, Kathy was questioned about the threats, and I provided the police with copies of all the evidence I'd gathered. By the time it was over, Frank was facing criminal charges, Kathy was looking at a civil lawsuit, and I was finally, truly done with both of them. The storm hit 3 days later, literally and figuratively. Thunder was rolling across the city when Kathy and Frank showed up at my apartment, soaked from the rain and desperate enough to try one last play. I was ready for them. Rye had installed a security system that would make a bank jealous. Cameras, motion sensors, and a direct line to the police station. My neighbor Franklin, a retired cop, was also keeping an eye on things. They didn't knock. Frank kicked in the door at 11 p.m., drunk and furious, wielding a crowbar like he was planning to renovate my skull. Kathy followed him, crying and pleading, but not trying very hard to stop him. "You ruined everything," Frank shouted, swinging the crowbar at my television. "My daughter's life is destroyed because of you." "Your daughter's life is destroyed because of her choices," I said, staying calm and keeping my distance. "I just made sure people knew the truth." "The truth?" "The truth is that you're a vindictive loser who couldn't handle being replaced by a better man." He swung the crowbar at me this time, but I was ready. Rye and I had prepared for this possibility, and the apartment was full of creative obstacles. Marbles scattered on the hardwood floor, cooking oil sprayed on the kitchen tiles, furniture positioned to create choke points and trip hazards. Frank slipped on the marbles, crashed into the oil-slicked kitchen, and went down hard. The crowbar skittered across the floor, and I kicked it away before he could recover. Kathy tried to grab my laptop from the coffee table, probably hoping to destroy the evidence I'd gathered, but she slipped on the same marbles that had taken down her father. That's when Franklin appeared in the doorway, service weapon drawn, looking every inch the cop he'd been for 30 years. "Everyone on the ground, hands where I can see them." The police arrived 5 minutes later, followed by paramedics who checked Frank for a concussion and Kathy for the bruises she'd earned from her fall. As they were being loaded into separate patrol cars, I stood in my destroyed apartment, watching 20 years of marriage and 2 decades of trying to be the good guy come to an end. Kathy looked at me through the police car window, her face streaked with tears and mascara, and mouthed the words, "I hate you." I mouthed back, "I know." Frank was shouting threats from his patrol car, promising revenge, swearing he'd make me pay for what I'd done to his family. I walked over to his window and tapped on the glass. When he looked at me, I smiled and said, "Tell it to the judge." The final score was simple. Frank got 6 months in county jail for assault and breaking and entering. Kathy lost her job, her family, and her boyfriend, who'd moved to another state to avoid the scandal. Bryce Walters was fired, divorced, and blacklisted from every major corporation in the city. As for me, I got my life back. Not the life I'd planned, not the life I'd expected, but a life that was finally, completely mine. 3 months later, I was sitting in Rye's kitchen, drinking good coffee and reading about Bryce's latest legal troubles in the newspaper. "Any regrets?" Rye asked. I thought about it seriously. 20 years of marriage, gone. A career that would always be shadowed by scandal. A family that would never speak to me again. "Just one?" I said finally. "What's that?" "I should have done it sooner." Outside, thunder was rolling in again, but this time I wasn't worried about storms. I'd weathered the worst one of my life, and I was still standing. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything. The war was over, and for the first time in years, I'd won something that mattered. The right to look at myself in the mirror without flinching. It had taken the complete destruction of everything I thought I wanted to realize what I actually needed. The truth, consequences for actions, and the knowledge that some people get exactly what they deserve. Kathy had wanted a real man. She'd found one, just not the one she'd expected.